Welcome, everybody, to the Renegade Squadron podcast, episode 1. My name is Lt-Reyne, and I'm joined by Goloith, Jolly, and Nohman to kick off our first ever weekly podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the questions and answers from the Star Citizen Q&A that happened, I believe that was Friday, right, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was Friday.
Yep.
Yeah. So
On
there's
Star
some
Citizen Live, right?
Yeah, the Star Citizen Live. So we had some pretty interesting questions and even more interesting answers, especially related to combat and flight. Kind of want to kick things off with some of the juicier stuff. Coming in 3.10, it looks like we can expect IFCS or flight model improvements. So that'll include things like the atmosphere, thrust efficiency, and curves. What do you guys think of that?
I can go if you guys want. I think it's great. I mean, I think a lot of us are really excited to see some changes. It's been quite a while since we've seen something rather dramatic. So I'm really kind of looking forward to what CAG kind of cooks up.
How do you think go on?
I was just gonna say, I think it's nice too that hopefully in 310 you'll see a direct advantage for ships that have VTOL capabilities, and actually give them, their own kind of unique stance in the
Yeah, I totally
breakup.
agree.
So you're obviously not going to be able to remain stationary indefinitely and say like a Gladius Vice and a Retaliator.
I think the other thing too is you kind of look at the way atmosphere has been for a while. It'd be nice to have that kind of refined a little more. Flying in atmosphere right now, it's not very easy, and it's very slow.
And I think hopefully some of the changes that they're gonna make are gonna avoid some of this sort of forward and backward sort of strafe forward, strafe backward mechanics. And if they add some accelerations and stuff to the some proper ramp up accelerations or curves to those to those degrees of freedom, you won't get these sort of I don't know what they call it. I think Gola, you're calling it
Maneuvering
sort of
spamming.
the maneuvering spamming, where people
spam.
are doing stuff with their ships that breaks the lock on the pip. I think that's something I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, and then even then, right now, you can strafe at max speed, be it left, right, or backwards at max speed, and so it's nice to see that kind of get fixed. I'm assuming that's not going to be viable anymore.
Yeah,
I mean,
your thrust
well, I mean, that's
efficiency
the
is
thing,
ridiculous.
yeah, like Jolly said, I mean, you can go left, right, up and down very quickly because we've got infinite jerk, and it's a problem. It essentially makes it so it just seems really rigid, and it'll be nice to have something to potentially deal with that. We don't know what it is yet, but yeah, hopefully it helps out with that. Because it's right now, it's almost kind of like a digital device. It's like all or nothing with acceleration. There's no gradual or decrease right now.
Yeah, and people have been using that as a way of being successful in these engagements. You see it very, very clearly with certain players where you'll see their pips moving forward violently, backwards violently, forward violently, just trying to make sure that you can't lock on. And even with the auto gimbals and the way they've changed the slew rate, I think it's called, on auto gimbals now, it slows that ability for you to track that player even more. It's I mean, hopefully, again, I think it's all conjecture at the moment, but the hope is that we start to see some more. I don't want to use the word 263 or 2x type flying, but where ships still had 6 degrees of freedom, but just didn't have the ability to make the pips dance around like they do. And I think that leads into the sort of next question around what are they going to do with fixed weapons?
Yeah, it would be nice to have fixed weapons improved as well. But that realistically can only be done with an improved flight model, right? Fixed weapons really bring a different type of skill into the game, whereas what we kind of currently have is it lowers the skill ceiling, but then it can also hurt people that are really good at aiming, right? Because it doesn't always work 100% as intended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hopefully they come up with some way to make them, improved. I know either that or they're going to do some type of nerf to auto gimbal or something. We'll see.
And they
But
didn't cover it very much. All they said that it's on their radar and they're looking. I don't think they gave a whole lot of information regarding how they're going to make them viable again.
yeah, there's kind of two directions, right? It's either you buff them or you nerf
Yeah.
auto gimbal. But it's one of those things that we've seen positives from both, auto gimbal that we've seen, as well as, hey, because you've got some type of auto gimbal, you've got these players that kind of juke all around, maneuver spam, and for some of them it catches up to them, but for others it doesn't. But if somehow fixed was buffed, it might encourage people to use fixed, and then when they use fixed, you'll notice people will naturally slow down, especially from some of our squadron battles that we've been hosting with just fixed guns. People naturally slow down when they use fixed, so that might also resolve some of these desyncing type maneuvers because they're just not viable using a fixed weapon. So hopefully we'll have to see what CIG comes up with that.
I mean, to me again, this is really a failure in the sense that we've basically taken out a whole class of weapons on medium fighters. So the fact that we size 2 now, and I mean it's not just about DPS. Obviously, it's all about time on target. And we've now been pushed to a point where a size 2 gun spends more time on target than its more powerful size 3 brother, and that's because of the way the flight model. There's probably 100 other different things, right, with network code and stuff like that. But, we've essentially taken away a class of weapon. And with CIG, doing the whole fidelity thing, where, we're creating multiple variants of weapons, and the amount of detail that they put into these things to basically cut out size 3 on every medium fighter, to me, is just a massive failure that hopefully they'll start to address fairly shortly.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, Fixer, I know we've done some ops in the PU, and, the one thing we've noticed is because if we're on like a moon or something with some gravity, we've noticed that because the ships fly a little bit, the auto gimbal is, relatively strong, but, fixed guns, we can't get a hint of how fixed guns can kind of work when you slow things down a little bit, to not be so jukey. So hopefully, flight model changes kind of also encourages those fixed weapon improvements.
Yeah. Well, I hope it does, and I also hope that they weren't lying when they said that they're expecting to have turret improvements. Turret improvements are a huge buff to a lot of ships that a lot of people want to fly, but either just can't right now because most of their guns are on turrets, or
Hurricane, baby.
Hurricane, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That thing's gonna be a beast.
I mean, they need to have a way though, like, why should I take out, let's say the hammerhead, for instance, and throw one person in a gunner? That doesn't make sense when I can just get them in a different ship and we'll still have the same amount of DPS on the field. You know what I mean? You need to encourage people to get into the turrets. There needs to be a reason why you would want to have a turret gunner over just another ship on the field.
Yeah, they've got to be definitely very strong in some type of. I mean, I think that'd be so cool to have a Super Hornet, and obviously, you normally would want the turret, the ball turret, slaved to yourself, the pilot. But if it was possible to have a gunner that somehow could have some type of even greater advantage, heck, you might see, Jolly running up around Port All-Star with a Hornet, with a gunner, and some people are licking their chops at this lone Hornet, and find out that it's got a turret gunner and just getting shredded by a turret gunner. That would make my day.
I wonder
absolutely.
I'm not really sure how they would improve turrets to a point where it would be more worth it to have just a whole other pilot, or like a whole other pilot in his own ship. Like even in a ship like the Hammerhead, right? Because I think it, and this is just in my own head, it seems like it would be easier to have somebody in a Gladius chase the other guy off of the Hammerhead than have somebody in the turret who can't really track him all the way around, right? Try to fight them off.
And yeah, they've definitely got to overcome that.
I think one of the inherent problems with sticking turrets on fast-moving ships, is the fact that you can't coordinate the fire between the turret gunner and the pilot sufficiently to make it an efficient use of of each other's time. Like if you're in a Hornet, you're maneuvering quickly, you're going up, down, left, right, whatever. And unless you fly straight and level and giving the turret gunner the ability to track a target, which then puts you into trouble, right? I mean, typically you look at turrets on, I guess World War II bombers and whatevers. These aircraft don't do violent moves up and down. They tend to fly straight and level, and they take out pilots that come, or fighters that come into their arc of fire, and then it moves over to the next one. I've always been a little bit what's the word? A little skeptical of the whole idea of putting a turret on a light or a medium fighter just for that reason. So,
and
yeah,
I mean, the big thing is having a flight model that allows. I mean, right now we can spin so quickly on top of each other. We always can go nose to nose if we want. And to make a flight model that allows for good push combat, ones where we can kind of push into our opponents, get around them, try and outrun that nose of that medium fighter. That's kind of where that turret gameplay really helps. Having that turret gunner is, okay, I'm in the Arrow, somebody else is maybe in a Super Hornet. I've now outmaneuvered them. Well, that turret gunner can now lay down fire. That would be cool. But we first have got to have the flight model that allows it. Otherwise, like you said, we might as well just have the guns kind of slave forward.
I've gone back and started watching all the Battlestar Galactica episodes again. And one of the, you look at the big capital ships, the way they use turrets or things along those lines, and it's basically a flak gun, right? So as missiles come in or as fighters come in, the turrets create this barrage, to the broadside of a ship or the front or the back or whatever, to basically act as a secondary shield, right? So the ability for, example, Idris, Hammerhead, for all those turrets to face into one direction and to basically put a barrage down, so so medium or light fighters will not come into the range of that gun, because they know that they're going to get absolutely decimated, right? They launch fighters, the fighters do what they're supposed to do and go fight other fighters, and then the barrage from other capital ships firing at each other, it is, there should be an ability to have a burst type damage or radius damage on a turret gun, track that with auto gimbals, and all of a sudden you've got this fucking devastating ship that you have to start using torpedo bombers or stuff to get past that. That to me is what I think is going to be, needs to be done.
Area denial. I don't expect a Hammerhead to chase down a Gladius and knock it out, right? But
exactly,
hold down a specific position, right, and just deny access. That's the role that it should fulfill, and it should fulfill that role very well. I mean, it is an anti-fighter, capital ship, more or less.
Yep.
And I'm completely with you in there. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I think CIG missed. I mean, I think the fact that they're bolting on repeaters and bolting on, multi-cannons, there should be a capital ship only weapon or a specific variant of gun that only does flak damage. It's an anti-aircraft weapon. It fires a flak round, and that flak round just denies an area. So if you park a Hammerhead outside a jump point, you better bring frickin' torpedo bombers or whatever to get rid of that. That adds a completely new dimension of play that we don't see right now.
I mean, we've got, ballistic scatter guns and ballistic or distortion scatterguns as well that can do a lot of damage. But we need to be able to target missiles, torpedoes that come in. That would make those kind of weapons really, really powerful, because you might have a hammerhead that might just have, maybe potentially 2 weapon groups. You could have maybe on each hammerhead turret, once, a set of flat cannon, scatter guns, and the others could be, laser repeaters or something like that. You know what I mean? But it'd be cool to have that and be able to target these torpedoes and missiles. I think that would be a great defense. Use
Absolutely.
of them.
I mean, all of a sudden a capital ship becomes a capital ship and does what it's supposed to do. And then if you want to take a capital ship down, you either bring another capital ship in, or you bring anti-capital ships to do that, destroyers and whatevers, or, frigates or torpedo type whatevers, submarines. Everything's taken out at a distance, right? And then you have, the ships that are scanning long range that you put out into the fleet to look for that kind of stuff. I mean, I know a lot of this stuff is still, in concept and whatever, but to me, releasing a flak cannon, or a proper flak cannon that, you can see these things just putting out a barrage of, it's like fireworks we just saw on the Idris and the Javelin thing. It's just a freaking area that's blanketed. You don't go anywhere near that ship. It's like, fuck that. I'm not going anywhere near that.
Yeah, and that's the only downside is with the current scatter guns, is they have way too much spread on them. So they're really not effective against a fighter, but they're effective for a fighter to sneak up on a larger capital and waste them. But yeah, you almost need a capital class or a multi-crew class type of flak cannon that they can mount it. That's got maybe not necessarily a whole ton of spread initially, but a lot of range, so that they can actually hit those things, other ships reliably at distance potentially, or, torpedoes or missiles, and not be abused by a small ship equipping it.
Yeah, I think the other thing to mention there too is not just like it needs to have lots of range, but the bullet velocity needs to be way higher on things on capital ships, because otherwise then you're just chasing a pip and you can't even see the guy on screen, right?
There's a lot of pip deflection. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we look at a lot of the weapon velocities on the projectiles, and they are way lower than what they used to be. I mean, I think 2.6 patches. I mean, a bunch of them, they were close to, I think Panthers were like 2,500 meters. Right now, Panthers are what, like 1,100? So, I mean, they're just so slow. And probably the real loser of lower projectile velocities is lag pips. I love lag pips, but you know what? They're almost unusable when they're down by your MFD.
Yeah.
Exactly. There used to be a couple of patches, I think. I remember where the lag pip would actually travel along the lag pip itself, so the actual dot would move up and down, and that changed a while ago, where the lag pip was anchored to the base of the dotted line or the hash line, and now, because like you're saying of the speed, this thing is moving down below the cockpit in a lot of ships and makes it almost unusable. And then you're talking about weapon velocities, where it's just so slow to use these weapons. I mean, the speeds are so slow, you're just not going to bother. You'll be using the lead pip, because it's like a 3-point throw where you're trying to lead the target and try to bring bullets across the ship itself. So, anyways, lag pips. Make lag pips great again.
Make lag pips great again. I mean, we could pretty much just scratch all of that, though, because it looks like they're going to be introducing avionics and blades with item 2.0, which includes AI blades that will be used to allow pilots to control turrets.
Yeah, interesting.
So I don't know how that's going to fare. Part of me is hoping that they don't do both those sort of updates at the same time, because that just kind of mixes things up a little bit too much all at once.
Yeah, I really want them to see how far they can push turrets, and I really want manned turrets, or remote turrets even, for that matter, because it's like, otherwise, if it's just we do the blades and the pilot can control it, well, then then that really answers the question of, well, why the hell would I not have 2 people flying slave ships versus, 2 guys in 1 ship, right, with a turret? So
Well, I mean, it needs to be fun and rewarding gameplay for the gunner. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, you need to. People are booting this game up and playing to have fun, right? And if they're stuck in a turret and they can't hit anything, or it's just not a good, rewarding, gameplay feature, they're just not going to bother. There's plenty of people that I know that don't enjoy flying ships and they play this game strictly for the FPS. And that's fine, but if you could give them a reason to jump into a turret and have a good experience, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm my buddy who's been thinking about jumping in and playing lately for the last like 2 years. All he's been asking me is, can I get into a ship that you own and be your turret gunner? And I have to keep telling him, like, turrets just don't, they're just not there, right? It won't be as fun as you think it will be to get into whatever ship that might be, like I don't think you can man the one in the, what is it? The Hornet, but the Cutlass Black.
You can
turret.
on the Hornet, but the pilot loses control.
Right. So,
it needs to be like mining or cargo hauling or any other gameplay loop. Fulfilling the role of a turret gunner should have the same level of feedback and enjoyment. And if it doesn't, well, everybody is going to have some problems as a result, just because it's going to be so hard to get somebody, Reyne, look, dude, I know you want to fly that Gladius, but dude, I need you in this turret. I know you hate it, but it is what it is. Like, it's just going to suck to force that upon somebody, or
right.
just not force it upon somebody at all. And then, everybody suffers as a result.
Yeah, there needs to be I feel like it's a really delicate balance between allowing you to slave your turrets and making turrets good when they're manned. I think, though, that in certain ships, like you look at like capital ships or like the Hammerhead, for example, because that's all manned turrets on the Hammerhead, I believe, right?
Yep.
Even if you could slave those, the Hammerhead's not maneuverable enough to actually make that viable in any sort of situation. Right? I think you will need crew, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, the worry for me is, again, not a worry. I guess is more of a, I guess the disappointment is, CIG's gone down the path of, continuing to just add more game features, more features, more features, more features, and AI turrets and AI blades and all that kind of stuff is really cool, but I think this is a wider discussion, and I think a general conversational piece around CIG strategy in general is, instead of refining a feature, which is turret gameplay. I mean, I think we've been talking about this for years. Every time I see some CIG guy get on and say they've made turrets better, and we try them and we say that they're okay, and they seem to be okay at the moment. But turrets still require you to be pixel perfect almost to hit something. Making turret gameplay fun and giving the multi. A lot of people want to do the multi-crew experience. That should be the goal: is to get manned turrets working as good as they possibly can now, and then move on to the automation of those turrets. I mean, I know we can do this in parallel, but there's still work to be done on manned turrets. And a piece of low hanging fruit to me is, why don't you just take auto gimbals and bring them over to turrets? At least
exactly. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that, actually.
Right?
Just let us put gimbal mounts on turrets, and I think that will make a huge improvement. It might not be perfect quite yet, but like that would
would certainly go a long way to making them viable.
Yeah.
The big thing obviously is allowing it maybe to have maybe a quicker gimbal, maybe, because we all notice that with light fighters, we tend to also assist our aim with our strafe sticks, right? They don't have that option, so they can't adjust like that. So they need to be relatively fast, especially if there's a target that's away from them. I know weapon ranges seem to be very, very. You can shoot quite a ways away. I know that's been an issue for a long time with these multi-crew ships. Of you can just outrange them to death. And heck, Jelly and I, we kind of noticed that back a few patches, I think. Maybe it was the last patch actually. But people would just sit there at 700 meters and just wiggle the pip and shoot medium ships and bigger, just peck them to death. And maybe they need to start looking at weapon ranges, or even buffing those projectile velocities so that people that are in turrets can hit them and not get pecked to death.
Yeah, it's just, again, if we're talking about a sort of band-aid fix, just take it. Like you say, increase the speed of the slew rate on turrets, because hey, on a big ship things are moving around quickly anyways, and all of a sudden people want to jump into turrets and multi-crew ships because they know they can have a pretty decent effect in an area. All of a sudden fighters don't just go in, 3 or 4 fighters aren't just going in there and decimating some capital ship, right? The capital ship's got to hope then, right? Then they have to start bringing in torpedo bombers, and before you know it, people are starting to have fun again with these things. So it seems like an easy fix. I'm sure it's not, but to me that's kind of low-hanging fruit before we move on to AI blades and shit.
Well,
Yeah, for sure.
Even then, you can get, a hammerhead now by stealing one of the pirate hammerheads and have a full NPC gunner crew. I don't understand why they don't give that feature to the player. Let's just say, you spawn in the hammerhead, you can set, I want 3 turrets manned and I'll be paying X for, per hour. Right now, if you want to get a fully crewed hammerhead, just go steal one. They have AI turret gunners right now in the game. It would be nice just to even get some bare bone features implemented like that in the hands of the player.
Yeah.
Yeah, they need to get some type of waypoint system or command system. I know Apex Legends has got a really, really good one, but to be able to okay, pick that target, click a button, engage or disengage might be helpful too. But I think they're kind of really waiting for the turrets to get better, just so that people test and play the crap out of manned turrets before they move on to that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Speaking of changes that are much needed, or maybe this is less than needed, but it looks like it's coming, though they have said it's a complex problem. The ability to change your thrusters seems a little weird.
I feel like that is way down the road. We got to figure out what we've got right now, but before we start doing Flight 2.0 with thrusters, you know what I mean? We got to get it nailed with what we have now. I feel like. I mean, I like the fact that it's kind of considered. I mean, if you think about it, we have had there's a lot of games where you can kind of swap out your thrusters, and you can kind of make your ship your own. And I think I get the idea that people want to have that, but we got to get one standardized baseline fixed, set first before we do any more, I think.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I also think part of the reason it's such a complex problem is because if they start letting you change out thrusters, they start having to make sure that thrusters are universally fit across all ships, right, of that category. And I know that people like it when they put a new piece on their ship or something and they can see that change. Whereas if every thruster just looks the same, then okay, maybe you make your ship a little bit more your own, but it doesn't look like it, right?
So it depends on what, I mean, Colson alluded to it on David Colson alluded to it on the Star Citizen Live, that, you start adding thruster combinations or thruster, you can, upgrade to thruster X and thruster Y. They're going to have to retune the flight models based on those thruster characteristics. So essentially for each ship, you're having to tune the flight model for each of those thrusters, right? If it's a cosmetic thing, who gives a shit, right? We make pink thrusters and we make purple thrusters,
right?
But if you're trying to get some, these thrusters don't overheat as much as these ones, to me, why would you ever use the other thruster anyways? Maybe you get a quicker, response time, but it overheats quickly, or this one sustains a, higher thing, but doesn't have as much thrust. I'm not too sure. You're basically doubling the amount of tuning work required to make one ship fly. And is that something that CIG is super interested in at the moment? I'd hazard a guess and say no. They can't even get what we currently have with the current thruster configuration working. And now you want to go and add another one? Like Goloith said, I think that's way, way down the pipeline.
Yeah, I totally think it is too. I just thought it was, worth bringing up. They did mention it, and I think that's a interesting, just sort of interesting that they they would even mention it at this point. Like, why is that being considered? Maybe, because it's something that should be so far down the road.
CIG tends to throw stuff out like this, right? It's cool. It's gonna, it's another way of configuring shit that hey, we've got different coolers, we've got different weapons, we've got gimbals, we've got no gimbals, we've got this. It's just another, feather to add to the development pipeline somewhere down the road. So I wouldn't put too much stock in it right now.
Right. Yeah. See you in 6 years when that changes.
Exactly.
What I did think was really interesting actually was the Vanguard nose weapons. They said they are probably not going to change them anytime soon because the Vanguard's ranking in the top 3 to 5 ships right now for kill death ratio in the PU and in Arena Commander. And the reason I think that's a little weird is because the Vanguard's only ranking that high, I think anyways, because of the Sentinel and its ability to shut an entire ship down in seconds.
Multiple ships.
Right? So I'd be interested to see how that changes now that they've kind of fixed or nerfed the EMPs.
I mean, the Vanguard has always been relatively a good ship. I mean, obviously there's been some patches that have had issues, and when it had issues, it was really bad. But it's been relatively really good. I've killed a lot of fighter pilots. You're doing the good old back strafe with the Vanguard, and you just got that Revenant going. You got the ballistic repeaters going on the nose, and you can tear shit up with it really quickly, especially even in a Warden. But you're right, that Sentinel is absolutely broken, or was broken. So we'll have to see. Hopefully, they make the regular Warden better in some capacity.
Well, with the change to fixed guns coming along, again, we don't really know what that's going to look like, but that could actually boost the Wardens, or rather just the Vanguard's ranking a lot.
Significantly.
Yeah, if it's actually viable.
So I think, one of the interesting things about the Vanguard for me is, I always look at what they call these ships, right? Like the Vanguard Warden is a heavy fighter, right? It's supposed to be a heavy, long range fighter. I always equate it to sort of the World War II, the P-52s or the I can't remember the dual engine looking sort of variant. P-38 Lightning or whatever they call it, right? And it's to go up against a light fighter or a medium fighter and have a decent chance of surviving at range. The Sentinel is essentially an E-warfare ship, right? It is, the EMP is there. I think the EMP is there not because it's to go up against light fighters and just blow shit out of the sky and turn stuff off. It's to go in there against capital ships potentially, or to, shut down systems or disrupt systems within an area. I don't see it as being that heavy fighter. It's going to be able to defend itself, and that's what shields are for. But I again, this is one of the things that it's like the Prowler conversation. The Prowler is a dropship, yet right now in the game, it is probably one of the most powerful PvP ships.
Yeah,
that's not the way it should be.
Yeah, I would say other than the Sentinel, the Prowler was pretty much the top ship. You put a top pilot in it, and you just pretty much mow down everybody.
Right, but the Sentinel had a bug, and that bug, when you fired the EMP, some people exploited it, right? And that bug basically negated shields and shut down systems. It's been addressed in this live build right now. And by addressing it, they mean that if you fire off an EMP with the shield still up, the shields will absorb a lot of it. right? And you won't get a system shutdown. But if you lose shields, which is essentially an EM curtain over your ship, the ship shuts down, which is kind of makes more sense to me. But
Yeah.
again, it's still, I still, my head, my little brain struggles with the fact that this is not a frontline fighter, Right.
Yeah.
right? So, at some point, CIG will read the brochure and go back and probably rehash the ships again and make them into what they're supposed to be.
Well, even then, like the Warden has no place anymore. I mean, the Sentinel and the Harbinger outclass it in every way.
Exactly,
And
Nohman.
one's a bomber, and one is dedicated ECM.
Right.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
So the Vanguard Warden is supposed to be the fighter, but it's now trumped by an electronic warship, and the bomber is now essentially useless as well, because you've essentially focused people on the fact that the EMP is now like the most powerful weapon in the verse, right? People naturally gravitate to that.
Right.
I mean, it's still an incredibly powerful chip, even currently in its current situation. I mean, it can drop half the shield. Yeah, heck, most of the ship.
Yeah,
And
I
if you
don't know.
got a second EMB boat, I mean, imagine if you had two Sentinels, right? I mean, you could still nuke people if you had two or three of them.
Right. That takes a lot more coordination,
or even
right?
a Sentinel and a few Hawks or a Warlock. I mean, that's the thing. As long as it's not like one Sentinel coming by and nuking 7 people.
Yeah.
And shutting them all off, right? There's got to be some coordination going on to achieve that.
That,
Well,
that
even then,
really is the problem with it, right? Go ahead, Nohman.
I would say in the game that we currently have, right? We're playing a game of rock, paper, scissors, right? I want to be playing chess, you know? We need a lot more complexity and variety, and, these ships should fulfill a certain role, right? I'm fine with a little bit of multi-purpose thrown in the mix, but they should kind of fall into a niche, right? It just seems a little silly to me, again, just reiterating it one more time, that the Sentinel is a top tier dogfighter at the moment due to the fact that it has an EMP.
Yeah, it should be the support ship. It should have probably the lightest amount of armor, or hull HP, compared to the other ones. I mean, the Warden, the dogfighting one, should be one of the toughest. It should be tough as nails compared to the other one. Maybe the bomber's got a lot. Maybe the bomber has a lot more armor, but
let's jump onto the Prowler. Let's talk about that. They did say that they're going to be nerfing the Prowler, right? That they understand that it's overperforming, and that they're going to address it.
Yes, they did say
So
that.
they have.
Yeah.
They have addressed it in this patch, right? What did they do?
Oh no.
They changed the hull HP.
Well, the whole HP isn't the problem; it's the shields. But
well, not even then. I mean, it's a stealth dropship with what is it? 2 gimbaled size 3s and 2 gimbaled size 4s. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the slave turret that was the issue, and it wasn't necessarily the hull HP. It was like people had mentioned, it was the shields. I mean, if you think of, we look at a lot of the multi-crew ships and even the fighters to some extent, we get the shields down, it's game over. Like they just die. I mean, how is that going to work for a multi-crew? Imagine being the repairman, the engineer trying to repair your ship, and you've got literally no lead time, and your shield's dropping, you're dead. Like your entire gameplay loop means nothing because, I mean, we're mostly shield based on our ships, not hull. And,
yeah. So I think the argument's always going to be right that hey, we're going to bring new shield techs coming in, physicalized armor's going to come in, da. But again, this is just another set of features that they need to go and balance, right? And this opens up the sort of Pandora's box of Pandora's box, or the dilemma that Star Citizen and CIG I think have, is how do you balance everything that you currently have? If you had 1 or 2 ships, easy. If you have 140 ships, not so easy. So I know CIG wants to sell the Prowler, and that was the ship of the week or the month or the whatever. And, it sold really well, but it's not selling what it's supposed to be doing. They basically turned it into a frontline fighter, and said, look how, and then let it out in the world, and people went, holy shit, this is amazing.
But that brings us to
And
another
$1.
point of like planned obsolescence. You know what I mean? Like surely they had to have realized that, you know, it was going to outperform everything else in the game at the moment. The
I
only
actually don't think they did, Nohman. I'll be honest with you, I don't think they did.
Yeah, I think they probably had it from their point of view of, oh, well, it's slow and you can't maneuver in it like you can in a fighter, which you know, I guess it is a little bit slower, but it doesn't really matter when you have that many guns and that much shield, right? If you come across one lone pilot or just a couple pilots, and you're good enough, you're going to be able to take them out, whether they're in, you know, sabers or gladiuses or whatever. And in my experience, even in like Arena Commander, right, like it's taken like 3 or 4 of us a considerable amount of time just to down a prowler, and that's, I mean, it's not hard to hit a prowler, you know, it's not like we're missing half our shots or getting outmaneuvered by it, right? Like you're just trigger down, staring at the prowler. It can't seem to hit you, but it takes forever for it to die. Right?
Yeah.
Well, what I think's happened is CIG builds a ship, they on paper add stuff, they go through the QA part of it, which is probably, you know, they you know, the designers go, hey, it's going to have a couple of these guns, this shield, that shield, whatever, and on paper they say, hey, this is it. They go off to QA. QA does the basics, right? I mean, they're in a hurry to get these things out. QA does the basics. Does it fly? Does it shoot? Does it whatever? Do they go in there in Arena Commander and, you know, go up against 3 or 4 half decent pilots at CIG and see if you can kill this ship in a, you know, is time to kill a QA test parameter? I
don't
would
think
say
so.
probably not, right?
Yeah.
Does it fly? Does the doors open? You know, does that little fucking amazing canopy do what it's supposed to do? Am I clipping through here, and there? You know, I do a bit of testing, fly fast, and does it overheat? You know, tweak that value a tiny bit, and then push it out, and then look for the public to tell you what's wrong with it. That's what I think CIG generally does.
Well, I think if you look at the Saber, you'll find that they didn't test the overheating problem when they released that ship.
This gets back to the whole. This gets back to the whole discussion around ship balance, weapons balance, flight balance. You know, heater, cooler, whatever. You know, if there was a strategy in place that CIG was, you know, balancing these things against, all these ships would come out and find their little place in the universe. Right now, every other patch, we get some obviously meta ship that comes out and is impossible to kill, and then the community reacts, and CIG goes, oh, okay, nerf, and, you know, mass drivers got nerfed, the prowlers HP got nerfed. You know, they didn't address the slaving of the turrets, but, you know, the Sentinel's EMP, oh, that got nerfed.
Right.
It just took a while.
It's reactionary as opposed to they're following some grand plan that we're just not aware of.
Well, I realize balance probably isn't a priority to them. They just want it to be playable. They want it to be relatively balanced, so no one thing, you know, outshines another. But it would be nice if there was a little bit more focus on it. Knee-jerk reactions don't do much to solve the problem, at least not, you know, from what I've experienced so far in life.
Right. Well, and I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Where it's like these ships should be specialized, right? And they need to fit into their own niche correctly. And with the Prowler, it's a drop ship and a hovering tank, from what I understand, correct?
Grab love.
Right. And so why should it be able to do anything relatively impressive in space at all? Right? Get it planet side, get it on the ground, drop your soldiers off and protect them. Right?
Well, that's the one thing that always kind of baffled me is, you know, you've got the Prowler and they've got the turret on the top, but why the hell did they not put a turret on the for dropship.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, okay, like you should probably have it on the bottom first, and then potentially on the top.
We'll just slap another, 2 more size 3s.
But
You know.
you know what I mean? It's the fact
Yeah,
of
yeah, I'm with
make
you.
them non-slip, and then they're not going to be as big a problem.
Yeah.
And they could go smaller guns too, right? They could put size 2s on there. I guess we're gonna have to see how well the new turret fixes, work.
Yeah. Well, I think it's got to be balanced with the other ground vehicles too, right? Like we have tanks and stuff that aren't in the game yet that we don't know what those are going to be like, and those things can't fly, so they won't be in space. But I guess I just feel like the Prowler should be almost just a horrible ship to fly in space. You don't want to fly it in space. You don't want to come across a fighter because you're just not going to be able to track it. But once you get it on the ground, it's this beast of a tank that is going to take a lot of firepower to destroy, right? So I guess it's not really its tankiness that bothers me. It's just its ability to keep up with small
It's
ships.
pretty agile and it's got relatively good rotation rates, so it can track fairly.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that they talked about a little bit about the sub targeting and things like that, and one of those things was being able to actually target ships' fuel tanks, like intentionally, instead of just what ship is that has that bug where you can shoot out its fuel tank and it's done.
Well, you can't shoot out its fuel tank intentionally, but yeah, if you hit a Buccaneer just right, it will lose control very quickly and shut down.
Right.
And we already can target engines on, when you fight a Vanguard, first thing you do, you sub-target the engines and you blow it, engine off by. Same thing with a Prowler, same thing with like a Freelancer. If you're fighting a MISC, you can do that too. But yeah, hopefully it's not too overpowered, just shooting, having an I win, sub-targeting spot, I guess.
Right, because as long
as it's somewhat difficult to hit.
Yeah, well, I think that's a little weird. Maybe not sub-targeting the fuel tank, but maybe if you there will be a spot on the ship that if you are using lag pips, say, you could target yourself. But I think sub-targeting such an essential piece of your ship is a little bit.
I mean, I'm okay with people sub-targeting. It's just because we are so lead pip driven right now, and they've really, like I said, I would like leg pips to get improved, and leg pips would help in that situation. But they definitely, it needs to be able to hit it on a maybe like pushing in on a target. Maybe it's kind of towards the rear end of the ship. You know what I mean? So if you're going nose to nose, you're not going to get a chance to hit it. But if you're able to push in, you've got that incentive to get that profile shot, and you've got that sub-targeted. That would be cool if you can crush.
Right.
But I know there's a big shield issue right now, and one of the things I've noticed on a lot of these ships, especially like the Gladius, is that you can literally outposition it, and because of the nature of the shields, the cross section or where the auto gimbal seems to lock on is not the center of mass. It's like the midpoint of the ship. And I've noticed that the front shield, even if you're kind of almost on top of it or behind it, it will still hit the front shield and not the rear shield. And the end result is you're never able to get through the shields, even out positioning, because the auto gimbal is aiming at the wrong spot. So it's got to be almost farther back on the ship to really incentivize people to kind of push in sub-target and hit that.
So they've talked about targeting as and shield consistency on the chat. Oh, sorry, Star Citizen Live on Friday. So Colson alluded to the fact, and I think the other can't remember the other guy's name, that he's sort of the ship tuner, talked about the fact that the new shield tech will give more consistent shield hits. So you'll see the ability, you should see some of the results of that shield tech improving overall hit detection. Because right now, they put a mesh over the top to represent shields, and that mesh isn't always consistent with the shape of the ship, right? Whereas with this newer signed distance field, my understanding is, and I could be wrong, is this is actually going to be a dynamically calculated. I don't know if it's a mesh or how it works, but this thing's going to be dynamically calculated as they go through, and calculate shields. So ships that change shape, their shields will be calculated dynamically based on that ship's geometry. So that should give us more accurate, hit detection, hopefully, and registration on shields.
I hope so.
Yeah,
feels kind of like a toss-up right now with shields. There's certain things you can do, like you strafe left and your right shield will get hit, and strafe right and your left shield will get hit, kind of thing. But
well, it'd be nice too to see some of these older ships that have suffered from shield holes kind of come back into the fold and be viable.
yeah, well, namely, one of my favorite ships being the Hornet. The Super Hornet.
The Hornet. Super Hornet has got a huge shield holes. It's huge.
It's so bad, and like I just want it to be good again, because I love flying in the Hornet, even though it was kind of like a little bit slower and it was kind of beasty. It was just such a fun experience flying in that thing.
And the funny thing is, the Hornet, when the Hornet was great, or a really, really fun ship to fly, the accelerations and stuff were actually quicker, weren't they, Golo? So things, like the actual flight mechanics, ships were moving faster, but they seemed to be moving slower, right? And I don't know how that.
Well, they had slower velocities, like total velocities in SCM. And
right.
It was also the fact that you have a medium ship flying at higher accelerations, and it's not so bad because it's a bigger ship. It's a bigger target to hit. But now we've got these ships that are small, like light fighters, and they've got the same higher accelerations that we used to have, and they don't have the mass, so they can just change directions very quickly. Whereas the bigger ships, you couldn't used to do that. You used to have to do, strafe right, then down, then left, then up. You couldn't just go, up into the right, down to the left, up into the right, down to the left. You can't do that, or you could not do that previously.
Yeah. It's just interesting to see how things have changed a lot, but they really haven't changed that much. It's just simply changing some of the flight mechanics of ships. All of a sudden changes the dynamic of everything. Like a big, you still get that sort of feeling when you, like, if I fight another Hornet, I still get some of that sense of the way it used to be. But then you see some of these new dynamics where you've got like instant accelerations forward and backwards, like you're up to your top SCM speed, or you're getting all the way up to cruise speed, backwards and forwards. And then you go back and look at some of the old videos and you're like, hang on a minute, what was different? Right? I don't quite understand it. I'm not technical. I don't understand why things were so much fun back then. And I know there's a whole underlying technology and there's IFCS and all that kind of shit. But taking away from what I've heard recently, there's nothing stopping us from getting back to something that used to be like that. It's just typically a designer, a tuner, making some of those changes in the flight models. And I think you'd find a lot of the PIP related issues that we have would probably vanish.
Oh yeah, with people going SCM plus.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a personal sucker for the dynamic system. It's just there's no penalties, and that's the issue, right? I mean, we know it's the same thing with the cruise mode, and that why we kind of left that is there was no penalties for that either, right? There was no spool up. There was no way to kind of tackle them or force them to drop out of. We just need to see some consequences, I think, to SCM plus, and hopefully that will encourage people to engage in combat in SCM, or some way to force them into it. I think that would be helpful. Otherwise, we're going to have just this jousty fest going, 700 to 1100 meters a second, skating around unless they do something.
Right. Well, and right now, one of the most frustrating things, I know, Golo, you've already talked about this, you know, quite a bit, is just that people have the ability to go from going forward to going directly backwards at an instant, and so you just end up getting kited constantly. And like, sure, that's your, I guess, viable strategy at the moment, considering, you know, you make the other pilot fly into your shots if they want to catch you. But
combat just devolves into that, right? It just, you've got
and that's
6
not
degrees
fun or
of
engaging for anybody.
exactly.
right,
You've
and
got
it's just bad. You should not be able to go backwards as fast as you can go forward, or not from a speed perspective, but
acceleration
perspective, right?
And there is some asymmetry between, you know, forward and back. It's just the ratio, I think, is like 2 to 1. We need like a 3 to 1 or a 4 to 1 ratio between forward and back. That would definitely allow us to push. You know, that's the big thing I hear from a lot of people. It's so hard to push, you know, against a medium fighter if they're doing it right. You go and try to fight some guy in a Banu Defender. What's he doing? Full tilt backwards, right? Or he's jousting past you. We need the forward acceleration, because forward acceleration is so important. And for anyone that's done any type of training at learning to keep a close orbit around somebody, I always teach people to do the asteroid trick. And what you'll find is that you require a ton of forward acceleration to circle an asteroid.
Yeah.
So just have that really tightens the circle, is that forward acceleration. So hopefully CIG does something with that to kind of deal with it. So yeah.
Hopefully, you know, during they did mention as well, like the MFD and hood persistence, right? And I hope that kind of comes with these fixes to shields and things like that. Hopefully that comes sooner rather than later, because that's one of my least favorite things, is having to get into my ship every single time and reset everything the way I like it. Yeah, overclocking, but also some certain ships, just they're not on the right MFDs to do that stuff, so you have to go in, find it, and it takes longer. And maybe, possibly, they might update some of the old HUDs to the new one that ships like the Gladius have.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
I think-
the big thing. Go ahead.
No, you go.
So the one thing that I'm really looking forward to is, like you said, is kind of getting moved over to the new HUD system, because who wants to load into a ship and then you're half dead by the time you get through the startup because of that lovely friends list bug. But you know, the big thing is being able to set it, have your profile set, maybe even multiple profiles, I should say. You know, that would be cool. And kind of actually the MFD may be providing relevant information. You know, I would like to see. It just seems like there's just a lot of pointless information.
I think that
like
well, go ahead.
I mean, what I would like to see is kind of this. You know, we first had a lot of helmet-centric HUD elements, and they provided all the information we ever could want. Really, I mean, it was very, very good, but it was kind of gamey, right? And they decided, hey, we're going to move to a more realistic. It's on the MFT, but it's just like it doesn't provide you the information. And that's kind of where we need the HUD elements of. We need information that's readily available, like how close to overheating are our guns, how many missiles do we have, stuff like that would help. You know, pin targets, right? Back in the day, we had pin targets. Kind of getting back to that, these helmet. And if people don't want that on, they can turn it off. Give them a button. But for a lot of us that are very combat focused, we want that information.
Yeah, I agree. And I think while we're talking about HUDs, one of the things I saw that was pretty cool, especially for an old guy with really poor eyesight, is the fact that we're now talking about the ability to have dynamic HUDs.
Thank God, huh?
Right, like the ability to actually you know, have HUDs dynamically change depending on the light behind them, which I think is just like so overdue. I mean, forget Arena Commander. You know, when you fly down to a really bright planet, like Yellow or something, and you can't see, To me, that's just crazy, right?
Yeah, we
People
need
Like,
drop shadow.
People avoid Broken Moon like it's the plague, just for that exact same problem.
And we always
You
get that
know?
moon like
And
5 times
Yeah.
yeah,
in a row.
long overdue.
Well,
Glad to see it.
and it's a problem in the PU and in other scenarios too. Just like if I'm out doing claim jumper missions and stuff, it always feels like the sun is directly in the way of my mission, and I'm just like what the fuck, man? I can't see anything, and you end up trying to like game your ship and turn it around so that some of the pieces of your ship are covering the sun. It really does feel like driving a car in real life. You're trying to find anything to cover that sun up, right?
But it's funny because they got drop shadows on so much stuff, but they never put it on the crosshair in the pip. I'm like, come on, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you had one job. You put drop shadows in, and you put it on a thing we didn't necessarily need.
I mean, I want the ability to be able to change my HUD, like my pip,
Yeah.
or my colors of my pip. So
Yeah.
I want a fluoro green pip or a red pip or something, or even just the ability to not be limited.
I want a bigger pip.
Yeah, exactly. That's
I want
exactly
a bigger
what I was
pip
gonna say.
I want a bigger pip with a little dot, and it's just easier for my eyes to track. I can, as long as I can keep my eyes on the big circle, I can keep my eyes on the little circle, that little dot, right? It's how I got all my guns set up. I've got a bigger circle with a little dot. Love it.
Yep.
Works great.
That's exactly the same thing. Like I know, things like Elite Dangerous and poor game to compare to this, but Elite Dangerous gives you the ability to change the color of your pip and customize the kind of pip you have. I mean, the fact that you've got, like CIG tells you that you've got a different pip depending on the weapon you have, or even lag pips. I think lag pips now have a different ability to choose, like different weapons will give you different pip types. I want to be able to customize that myself. And again,
Absolutely.
this is all what's the word? This is all stuff that's probably going to come in a finished game. But we're playing this game right now, and this is quality of life stuff that I think people will appreciate.
Yeah, I think and certain changes like that, and a bunch of little changes like that would be much better than just releasing another Carrack or another Prowler, right? I think people would rather see certain changes like that, and I know that those teams don't really overlap and things like that, right? But it does feel like they put a lot more weight on just releasing a new ship and like, oh, look at this cool thing that it does, rather than like improving our experience whatsoever. And I don't expect it to be extremely polished or perfect by any means, because I do know what state the game is and where it's at in development, right? But you guys are totally right. Just like this, changing the color of your hood or putting drop shadows on the pip so you can actually see, maybe in my window for my ship, maybe that has some sort of light reduction that stops the sun from glaring in my eyes while I'm trying to fight stuff. Right?
Hey, while we're on this subject, can we clean the canopies too? Can we?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Like,
seriously.
just gotta, take care of some of these scratches I got.
I would like to look at the top third of my clip screen, like cockpit. Like, geez, get the
Yeah, you Eclipse pilots got it bad.
$5 for Windex.
You'd have to buy in-game Windex, right? But if Chris wants immersion, you'd have to get your $10 bottle of in-game Windex to put a new glass shader on your whatever, or,
Yeah, you know what? I'll buy it. Like, fuck. Like, can I polish my Gladius while I'm at it? That thing looks like it's been sitting in the desert for 10 years, like on Jakku or something.
Yeah,
I think the running joke has been one of these days a backer's going to send him, a pair of aviators with the reflective on the inside.
He'd probably enjoy it. He'd be like looking at it going, what a great set of eyes I've got. Thank you, Backer 11111, whatever, love my I love the look of my eyes. But anyways, I mean this is all stuff that I mean I remember when they changed the glass shader on the Gladius, they added that kind of, you've got that sort of explosive bolt thing that sits at the top or the top of the
Yep.
canopy. And between, I can't remember what patch 3 something and something, they added that sort of, that bubbly kind of, or that
Yeah, it's kind of
distortion effect.
Yeah.
That distortion effect on its own killed 10 frames. And the reason I know it is because when we're testing in PTU, you'd go into a live build and you'd go into a PTU build, and you could, looking exactly the same scene in Arena Commander, you'd see a 10 frame difference. And the only thing that was different was that canopy. You'd get into another ship just to do a test, and you'd see that. Now, I get it, but if you want to do optimizations, it's probably not a great thing to kill 10 frames out of a game that's already super intensive when it comes to this stuff.
I think, yeah, I mean, optimization's pretty poor right now, but just in general, I think that, you having your canopy all scratched up is like, why? I just bought a brand new ship or whatever. I just got my insurance out on a brand new ship. Why is it scratched up? Like, I didn't ask for a refurbished ship. I asked for a brand new one, right? And
yeah,
I think I don't mind, like, say, having your ship all damaged up and dinged up after a fight or whatever, and maybe some of those things might persist on the glass or on the hull, even if you've repaired it and things like that, until, say, it blows up and you end up needing to claim your insurance. But just having it permanently there doesn't make me feel like it's more lived in, or like the world's or the universe is more lived in. It just sort of makes me feel like you're giving me hand-me-downs.
Yeah, I mean, it should start off pristine, and then maybe, we talk about a shader where it ages as time goes on, and you've got to keep it up. You got to maintain the ship. Kind of cool, right? But yeah, beyond that, I'm buying a new ship. I want it to look amazing.
Yeah. As much as I love the look of the Pirate Gladius, it just looks like it's dusty and ready to be thrown out.
Exactly.
Put a car wash in the game. I don't care. Shit, I'll give you, I'll give you $5 for Windex. Whatever. Let me clean it up, man. Yeah, I think that's for the most part, everything that we had to talk about that was combat or flight related. There's a few other things on the list here. If you guys wanted to go over them quickly.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Kind of starts with docking being worked on, which I guess we kind of all really knew that was being worked on and that it was coming, but we got to see it, right? In game with the Invictus launch week, we get to see some of these ships sort of do a docking type animation. I don't know if that's really fully what will be when it's finally released in the game, but I think it's pretty cool. A long time coming. I think a lot of people want to be able to dock their capital ships and things like that and have them flyable. I think with this Invictus launch week kind of showing that tech off and everything, it looks like we're getting a lot closer to having things like the Javelin and the Idris in the game.
I think the big thing I'm kind of excited for docking is maybe seeing if we can get some tier 0, some piracy. If we can board a Constellation or one of these bigger ships and try and break the doors open.
That is what I'm talking about right there. Let me shut your ship down so that I can board it. Not blow it up. I want to board it.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple other things they talked about. I put a note here is that a lot of the major problems that they're having with building some of these ships and fleshing them out and bringing them from the original concept that they're selling to an in-game ship is object containers and how things attach to the ship and fit inside them, because like they said, like all of the ships in the game fully fit inside of themselves. There's no cheating or anything there, right? All the systems you see, the landing gear, all the wings coming out and all that kind of stuff is it needs a spot to go, right? And when there's a minute change, they mentioned, if you add whatever, a couple feet of landing gear, they need to rework the interior of the ship and how that works. So I think, maybe people should give them a little bit more slack when it comes to going from concept art to actually in the game, right? That's not always as easy as it looks.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not a game developer at all, but I mean, it sounds like it is an immensely difficult problem to try and solve. I have no doubt they're going to solve it, but I'd rather them take their time and we get a nice polished product than to rush anything out the door. And honestly, I think like just being able to see the Idris M and the Javelin in game, I mean, personally, that's kind of enough to kind of quail me, and calm me down. And some of my pessimism kind of goes off to the side. It's nice to see that they're actually, getting these models in game and they're actually functioning and they're traveling from one port to another. It's just refreshing to see. Reinvigorates me.
There's a lot of, I mean, there's got to be a lot of work that goes into building a ship that big and making it fly and work properly. And yeah, being able to see them in game flying around and docking is just it's actually kind of incredible that we're at this point now. I know it's been years, and a lot of people namely that have been playing this game consistently since 0.8 or whatever the first patch was, are probably just like, finally, right? But it kind of, as somebody who frequently takes a little bit longer breaks, for me it kind of feels like it was just yesterday, and it gets me more excited every time I see something like that. But I guess going back to that, like object containers and fitting everything into ships, the Star Runner, a lot of people have been asking questions about why the Star Runner has two big thrusters on either side instead of one giant one in the middle. And that's because they decided to fix it so that it could fit a rover properly.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's such a cool ship, and I'm so excited for it. Hopefully we get data running with it. They did mention that a little bit. Just releasing ships with their gameplay loops, but they said obviously not every ship can do that. It's not always on the same schedule. But they did sort of allude to data running coming with something like a Star Runner potentially. So that made me even more excited for it, but also knowing now that you can put a rover in there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, the one thing that I think would be great with the Star Runner is, with a lot of, being interdicted and being scanned and stuff like that, it would be, I think, a great opportunity to kind of bring drug labs back, stuff like that, contraband. Sure, it might not be data, but, being able to, pick up a bunch of drugs and you've got a ship that's got like hidden storage on it, you can even just kind of cheese it and just say, hey, a Star Runner, if it's got drugs on it, doesn't, it can get through, 8 out of 10 times, you know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas every other ship would get picked up, they only got like a 1 in 10 chance of not getting their contraband scanned or something like that, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Oh man, I'm so excited for that ship. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm too excited for it.
Yeah, I already have like 2 Hurricane, 2 Star Runner upgrades in my hangar. So
yeah, I just love that ship. I love the look of it. I love the idea of the whole data running thing. Exploration's been my thing for a really long time. Much as I love, being a fighter pilot and everything. If there's a gameplay loop that you're going to see me doing outside of, dogfighting, it's definitely going to be things like exploration and data running. Those are just...
It's that Millennium Falcon, right?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like, right? Everybody equates the Star Runner to the Falcon, right?
The question is, though, which color do you got? Do you got the black one or the white one?
I want the white one. I like the black one too. Don't get me wrong, but I think the white one just looks super clean.
I wonder if they're going to handle it like a paint skin. Probably, I'm thinking.
I hope so, because
Yeah, me too.
going along with polishing our ships and making them not look like they've been stranded on Jakku for 10 years. Let me paint them too, thanks. The other thing that I think is definitely worth noting, and a lot of Carrack pilots are going to be happy about this, is that the antennas and the armored plate for the cockpit are being implemented. The reason they haven't yet is the armored plate seems complicated, they said, but the antennas, they said, well, we don't really have a use for them, and it's a lot of work just to do that, and we wanted to get the ship out. So if you're a Carrack pilot and you were really excited for the ship and it came out and you weren't so excited after seeing there was no antennas all over it, don't worry, you will get those.
Yeah, I'll say the Carrack definitely set a new bar, though, as far as like, a concept ship coming into the flight ready status. I mean, it is just unbelievably good. The exterior, the interior. It didn't quite hold true to the original concept art, but still, like, just everything works and looks so good on that.
Yeah, it does. I like all the elevators and everything. It is a really cool ship. It's fun. It's definitely fun to board and break into.
Oh yeah.
That's most of my Carrack experience has been boarding other people's Carracks, breaking in and killing them. But
sure,
I don't have $600 spent on a Carrack, so I'm gonna get on one at any point. It's probably just gonna be to kill you. Watch out. Fly safe out there, guys.
So one of the other things they kind of talked about is having a calling all dev on
That's
on salvage. So
okay.
That's the one thing that I'm kind of really looking forward to, because now I'm not going to be some filthy pirate. I'm attacking your ship so that my salvage buddy can loot your corpse.
Yes. Salvage is going to be... I hope that there's more to that calling all devs salvage episode than just, oh, look, we're working on it and it's still 3 years away, right? Because...
I mean, even if it has like a tier 0 kind of like mining, I'm fine with that, right? You select the ship. It's even if it's like almost 99% of, the same as the mining mechanic. I'm cool with that just for now. Just get it in there and allow us to mine the ships. I think that'd be so cool.
Yeah. Everybody's been waiting for salvage for such a long time, right? So many people got reclaimers. Everybody's just waiting.
I thought a lot of people actually, when I thought a lot of people expected mining was going to be, salvage was going to be one of those things that was going to come sort of straight after mining, and it didn't. And a lot of people had the idea that, I bought what do they call it? A vulture, I think it's called. The little yellow mining thing that was straight out of Eve or whatever. I can't remember what the
it's the vulture.
The vulture, that's it. And that's what I thought as well. There's going to be something fairly quick. It's going to come out quickly, and we're going to have some real fun. I mean, even if it's just a mining mechanic, right? And you can just mine the scrap of ships. That to me would have been awesome. But obviously they're thinking something a little bit more in depth, as CIG typically does.
Yeah. Well, I think they probably didn't want to release, and I know everybody doesn't care, and you just want the mechanic in the game so that you can have a purpose for your vulture or your reclaimer, and you have a reason to blow up somebody's ship, right? But releasing something like that and then just being like, look, it's the mining mechanic, but with salvage, and we'll change it later. And then, that would get put on
years.
that gets put on the back burner for one of the last things they do if they do that, right? So I think overall we got a better outcome, but
so I think to be honest, I think mining was one of the best implemented features in the game. Like literally, it's iterated well. Like the initial release was good. It's iterated well through the patches. And that's the way CIG, when it does something pretty cool, has created a mechanic that just works. It works well. I'm sure there's bugs and stuff along the line, but you can see it getting better as time goes on. I wish that apply that sort of same philosophy to other features that they've implemented.
Right.
To me, that's a shining light or shining example of how to do shit good.
The mining consumables are neat. You have Quantanium in the game now. You can routinely make about 200,000 per trip, depending on the node that you come across.
That's in a
All in all, it's
prospector.
pretty fun. Yeah, so the Quantanium's also a volatile cargo, so once you get it on board, the timer starts, and you have a pretty limited amount of time to get it back and sold and off your ship. But all in all, from what I hear, it's implemented really well, and it's very profitable.
That's
And
cool.
it's good, engaging gameplay, and I like the fact that there's a lot of it's not mindless. I think of like mining in EVE Online. You warp to the asteroid belt, you press F1, you sit there, you orbit it, and then the rock just disappears, and off you go.
Yeah.
I
Well,
hope that salvage requires the same amount of input, and has the same kind of risks. You overcharge a rock, it detonates, potentially killing you, your ship, and everybody else on board. I kind of hope salvage has, some risk and reward factors.
yeah, it'd be cool if you're out there salvaging and you accidentally grab a sharp piece of rusted metal, and you got to go get somebody in a Cutlass Red to pick you up and get a tetanus shot. And no, but I do agree with you. I do hope that salvage does have some sort of risk to reward. That's beyond just like we're attacking a ship to blow it up for its salvage, and that it's implemented just as well as mining was, because I think that'll reinvigorate a lot of I guess bitter vets to come back to the game and start playing again. Yeah, that'll give us fighter pilots something to do, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So does anyone have anything else we wanted to talk about before we close out?
I think that's everything.
Good first
Golo?
podcast.
I mean, it was a pretty juicy sources and live. So yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of cool things coming down the pipe. So we'll see where CIG goes with it.
Charlie, anything?
Don't hold your breath. Be quietly optimistic, but we've been disappointed before. Let's hope CIG surprises us this time and delivers a, I don't want to use the word Jesus, but a Jesus patch would be nice.
Yeah.
And get some real love to the flight mechanics and some of the aiming and stuff. We'll see, but cross fingers, see what happens.
Fingers crossed. Well, guys, thanks for listening. That was the Renegade Squadron podcast number 1. We'll catch you guys next week.